What happens when an undercover boss walks into his own store and freezes at a comment from his cashier? Let's find out together. James Parker, a 55-year-old CEO, had built Parker's Quick Stop from one small grocery stand into a statewide chain. Over time, he realized that profits and spreadsheets didn't reveal the real heartbeat of his business. He missed the old days, when he personally greeted shoppers, listened to their stories, and solved problems one at a time. Driven by a need to reconnect, James decided to disguise himself as an ordinary worker and visit a busy store unannounced. He chose a location in a bustling suburban area. Instead of the quiet coastal town where his dream began, this store was surrounded by coffee shops, dental clinics, and newly constructed apartment complexes. The traffic was heavy from dawn to dusk, with lines of cars feeding into neighboring strip malls. Early on a Friday morning, James slipped into a pair of tattered cargo pants, a worn-out flannel shirt, and an old baseball cap. He added a thin layer of gray stubble by foregoing his usual clean shave for a week. He looked in the mirror and whispered, "Here goes nothing." When he pulled into the parking lot, James felt an odd flutter of nervousness that reminded him of his early days as a small business owner. Once inside, he moved swiftly to the store manager's office, introducing himself as Cal Mitchell, a temporary hire sent by headquarters. The manager, Diana Morgan, was in her early 30s, a charismatic, no-nonsense woman with quick reflexes and a natural ability to juggle multiple tasks. She examined James's paperwork and gave him a warm smile. "Welcome aboard. We could always use extra help. Why don't you start by organizing the end cap displays in aisle 3? James nodded and hurried to the assigned aisle, appreciating how energetic the store felt. Shoppers wheeled carts down brightly lit lanes, scanning shelves piled high with snacks and household essentials. The overhead speakers played soft music that blended with the chatter of customers comparing products. He noticed how well-stocked and tidy everything appeared, crediting Diana's management. Still, he was here for a deeper view, one that numbers and neat shelves could never fully show. As he began rearranging bags of chips and jars of salsa, he heard a small commotion near the front of the store. Curious, he inched closer. That's when he noticed a young male cashier greeting each customer with contagious enthusiasm. His name tag read, Ethan. He appeared to be 19 or 20, tall and lanky, with short, curly, light brown hair peeking out from under his Parker's Quick Stop cap. Even from a distance, James could sense the friendly warmth in Ethan's tone. "Hey, Miss Carter," Ethan called to an elderly woman, helping her load groceries into her cart. "Let me know if you need anything else. Have a wonderful morning." She smiled back, responding to him like an old family friend. It was clear Ethan knew many regulars by name. Every few seconds, James heard a snippet of chat about someone's grandchildren, a neighbor's birthday party, or local news. Ethan's grin never wavered. James returned to his task but remained within earshot of the register, wondering how a teenager could embody the very spirit he'd always hoped his employees would possess. While he was finishing the display, he overheard something that made him pause. An older man with a scruffy beard, wearing clothes that had seen better days, approached the register. He looked embarrassed as he placed a modest assortment of items on the counter: a discounted loaf of bread, a small block of cheese, and a can of tomato soup. Ethan's expression shifted to gentle concern. He quietly whispered, "You know what? Let me cover part of this, Mr. Reese. Don't worry about it." The customer protested in a hushed voice, insisting he couldn't keep accepting help. Ethan simply responded, "It's all right. I want to. Please, let me do this." James's heart jolted. He couldn't recall ever having created an official policy about employees paying for customers' items out of pocket. That wasn't something he would typically encourage or even expect. Yet here was a young man who did it as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Was this a one-time act of kindness, or something that happened more often? James resolved to watch Ethan more closely before making any judgments. Later, during his break, James wandered into the cramped employee lounge. The walls were painted a dull beige, and the furniture had seen better days. A vending machine rattled in the corner, refusing to drop the last pack of cookies someone had paid for. James grabbed a folding chair, sat down, and found himself face to face with Ethan, who was eating a homemade sandwich. "Hey there," Ethan greeted. "You're the new guy, right, Cal?" James nodded with a slight smile. "That's me," he said. "How's your day going?" "Pretty good," Ethan replied, wiping his mouth. "We had a lot of folks come in early. It's been non-stop since opening." "I saw you help that customer pay for some groceries," James ventured casually, pretending to be just another curious coworker. "That was nice of you." Ethan looked a bit surprised. "Oh, you noticed that?" He shrugged. "Mr. Reese has been having a tough time. His landlord raised the rent, and his hours at the factory got cut. He's a proud guy, never wants handouts, but sometimes you gotta do what you can to help. My mom always said, when you see a need, fill it if you're able." He took another bite of his sandwich. There it was, the pure sincerity that James had missed in the corporate environment. No policy or training manual had taught Ethan this. It came from a genuine desire to support another human being. James found himself both moved and concerned. He wondered if Ethan ever risked management's reprimand. Did Diana or anyone else realize what he was doing? That afternoon, James was assigned to help receive a delivery of canned goods and cleaning supplies in the back. While unloading boxes, he crossed paths with Walter, a grizzled man in his late 50s who walked with a slight limp. Walter struck up a conversation. "Cal, right? Good to have another set of hands around here. Been with the store long?" "It's my first day," James replied. "So far, I like the atmosphere." Walter gave a raspy laugh. "We try. Diana's a good manager. Straightforward and fair. It's not perfect, but I've worked worse jobs. At least here, I don't feel like just another cog in the wheel." James took a moment before steering the topic. "I've noticed that cashier up front, Ethan. Seems like a helpful kid." Walter nodded vigorously. "He's a gem, always checking if folks need anything. I've seen him pull out his wallet a few times to cover small bills for people who are short. Don't know how he does it, especially since he's not exactly rolling in cash himself." That confirmed James's earlier suspicion. Ethan was indeed footing the bill for multiple customers, not just once in a while. James's heart swelled with respect, but a flicker of worry passed through his mind. He decided to probe further. "Does management ever say anything about that?" Walter shrugged. "Diana's aware he's extra nice, but I don't think she knows to what extent. Corporate policy might frown on it. Guess it hasn't come up as an official issue, probably because most folks who get helped don't go bragging. They're just grateful." James found himself reflecting on how the best parts of his company might be hidden from official reports. No line on a balance sheet would show Ethan's quiet generosity. All the more reason his undercover plan felt justified. He needed to see firsthand the day-to-day reality that sometimes got lost in data and managerial hierarchies. By closing time, James's arms ached from handling heavy boxes, but his mind buzzed with thoughts of what he'd witnessed. He slipped out of the store, careful not to draw attention. Peering around the corner, he saw Ethan on the sidewalk, waiting at a bus stop. The young man stood there with a tired posture, shifting from one foot to another. James felt a pang of guilt for trailing him, but curiosity won out. He wanted a glimpse into Ethan's life outside these walls. Ethan boarded the bus, and James followed discreetly, sitting in the back. Streetlights illuminated the route as they traveled toward an older part of town. Tall buildings with peeling paint lined the streets. Eventually, Ethan got off near a row of aging apartment complexes. He pulled his hoodie tight against the evening chill and disappeared inside. James gazed at the rundown surroundings, trying to absorb the fact that this teenage cashier, who had so little, was giving to others. He quietly slipped back onto the next bus, heading in the opposite direction, his mind replaying Ethan's simple words. "My mom always said, when you see a need, fill it if you're able." The next morning, James arrived early for his shift as Cal Diana assigned him to front-end duties, where he would greet customers, restock impulse buy items, and observe transactions. She needed extra hands because a few employees had called in sick. Right away, the morning crowd poured in, many stopping at Ethan's register. James noticed that people seemed to enjoy chatting with him about everything from the latest local sports results to a new bakery that had opened down the street. One woman, apparently a single mother, struggled with her cart, which was loaded with diapers, formula, and discounted produce. As Ethan scanned her items, she nervously counted out coupons, apologizing for how many she had. Ethan calmly told her there was no need to apologize. He made sure all the coupons were applied correctly, even checking if the store's loyalty app had any hidden discounts to combine. When he saved her a few dollars, she sighed with relief and softly thanked him. Ethan just grinned and said, "I'm here to help." As James positioned himself near the entrance, a friendly greeting to new arrivals on the tip of his tongue, he couldn't help but marvel at how this store felt so different from his typical corporate vantage point. Back at headquarters, most conversations revolved around revenue, margins, expansion plans, and brand image. Here, in the trenches, the real brand image was shaped by employees like Ethan, who took the company motto, "Excellent service, always," to heart. On his lunch break, James found himself at a small table near the coffee machine in the employee lounge, reading a brief store policy manual to keep his cover intact. Ethan approached with a half-eaten slice of pizza. "Hey, mind if I sit?" James smiled. "Not at all," he replied. After a moment of silence, he broached the subject carefully. "I'm curious. Do you ever worry that management might disapprove of you spending your own money on customers?" Ethan shrugged, chewing thoughtfully. "I haven't really thought about it as a policy thing. I never ring it up incorrectly, if that's what you mean. I just pay for the difference myself. It's a tiny gesture, and it's not like I'm doing it for everyone who comes through. I know I can't solve all their problems, but sometimes a few dollars might mean someone can pay a bill or pick up extra diapers. Maybe I shouldn't, but I can't help it. My mom, she always told me we rise by lifting others." James felt a twinge of nostalgia. "Your mom sounds like a great person," he offered, remembering how his own father's wisdom had shaped him. He recalled a quote from his dad that echoed Ethan's mother's sentiments. "If you have a chance to leave the world better than you found it, why wouldn't you?" Now that concept felt more alive than any corporate slogan ever could. After lunch, Diana asked James to spend part of the afternoon in the stockroom. While sorting through inventory, James ran into Walter again. Between stacking crates, Walter confided, "You know, Ethan's got his own challenges at home. His mom had some health issues recently. He works these shifts to help pay her medical bills. That's why it's so surprising he finds extra cash for other folks. I keep telling him, 'Look out for yourself sometimes, kid,' but he just laughs it off." James paused, leaning against a tower of water bottles. So Ethan, who already carried the weight of family responsibilities, was still reaching into his pocket to help strangers. In a society that often prizes self-interest, his selflessness was extraordinary. It struck James that if he hadn't come here in secret, he might never have uncovered this quiet hero in his own ranks. That night, as James tried to fall asleep, he kept replaying those moments. Ethan's genuine smile, Walter's admiration, Diana's supportive leadership style, the grateful customers. It was time to act. The following day marked James's third as Cal. He knew he had seen enough to confirm both his hopes and fears. He was proud of Ethan's compassion and unsettled by how easy it would have been for corporate leaders to remain unaware of the everyday struggles and heroic gestures happening on the ground. At closing time, James requested that Diana gather the entire team in the break room. The tired employees filed in, dropping aprons or name tags onto chairs, expecting some sort of standard announcement. Ethan, yawning from a long shift, took a seat near the back. When everyone had arrived, James removed his baseball cap and said, "I'm sorry for the confusion, but my name isn't Cal Mitchell. I'm James Parker, the CEO of Parker's Quick Stop." A collective wave of shock swept through the room. Diana's jaw dropped. Walter's eyes darted from James to Ethan, while Ethan himself looked like he might faint from surprise. James took a steadying breath and began, "I've spent the last few days undercover because I wanted to see beyond the numbers. And what I found is incredible. He turned toward Ethan, swallowing a lump in his throat. Ethan, your kindness has reminded me why I started this company in the first place. You quietly go above and beyond, not just in your job duties, but in truly caring for the people around you. You've used your own money to help those who can't afford their groceries, even when you don't have much yourself. That's what makes you special, and it's time we recognize that. James nodded at Diana, who stepped forward, grinning widely. Effective immediately, Ethan. You're being promoted to a supervisory position, with a raise, James announced. But that's not all. I also learned about your mother's health issues, and I want you to know that we'll be assisting you with her medical bills through a new fund we're establishing. This fund will help employees in genuine need across all our stores. You've inspired it, and we're naming it the Bridge of Hope Initiative. Cheers erupted across the room. Walter clapped so hard the clipboard in his hand nearly slipped. Diana wiped the corner of her eye, while a few other staffers exchanged hugs. Ethan sat there, stunned, tears welling in his eyes. I don't know what to say, he managed, voice trembling. I never did it expecting anything. That's exactly why you deserve it, James replied with a quiet smile. He then turned to the entire team. I've also seen how tirelessly you all work, and I realize that as our company grows, it's easy to lose sight of the people who built it. We're increasing our support programs, like sick leave, tuition reimbursement, and assistance for those facing tough times. Parker's Quick Stop will stand by the core belief that a successful business isn't just about profits, it's about people. After the meeting, Ethan finally mustered the courage to approach James. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. Mr. Parker, I'm so grateful, but really, you don't have to do all this. I'm just doing what I think is right. I didn't mean to break any rules. James laughed softly. You're not in trouble, Ethan. You've actually opened my eyes to how important it is we keep the heart in our business. I should be thanking you. Ethan's relief was palpable. Word spread fast among the employees, and soon the break room was abuzz with excitement. Some shook James's hand, others patted Ethan on the back, and Diana began asking around for suggestions on how to make the store an even better place to work. In that humble, windowless lounge, the team felt more united than ever. James could see the wheels of real change turning before his very eyes. Over the next few weeks, the store transformed into a model location. Customers noticed the difference, pointing out that the energy just felt friendlier, more personal. Diana oversaw a new mentorship system, where experienced workers helped newcomers adjust, not just with procedures, but also with the store's culture of genuine care. Walter, who had once felt overlooked in previous jobs, found renewed purpose as he assisted younger stockers in organizing the back room, while sharing bits of wisdom from years of labor. At headquarters, James made it a point to visit each department, from human resources to marketing, sharing Ethan's story as a reminder of the company's values. He pushed for a streamlined process so employees could request or offer help in times of crisis. No more endless paperwork or strict rules that hindered kindness. We're not aiming to create a perfect system, he told them, but we're trying to make a real difference in people's lives one step at a time. It worked. Morale began rising in other stores as the Bridge of Hope initiative gained traction. A cashier in another city had her textbooks paid for when she enrolled in community college. A stockroom associate with mounting medical bills received assistance to cover a sudden hospital stay. This was no longer just a job for many employees. It was a community that valued who they were. One evening, James walked into Ethan's store dressed in his usual suit, no longer hiding under a flannel shirt and cap. The store was winding down for the night, but Ethan was finishing up a shift, supervising a few cashiers as they balanced their tills. James waited until Ethan was free, then approached him. You look the part of a supervisor, James joked, noticing Ethan's new name tag and the slight changes in his uniform. How's it feeling? Ethan laughed, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. I'm learning something new every day, he admitted. I still help customers, but now I also have to manage schedules and inventory checks. It's more responsibility, but I like it. I get to share my philosophy with others, make sure nobody forgets our main goal, to treat everyone with dignity. James nodded, pride shining in his eyes. That's what leadership is about, Ethan. Sharing not just a workload, but a mindset. Over time, Ethan's mother's health improved thanks to better treatment, and the relief was visible in Ethan's face. He remained the same generous soul, but now, his generosity reached even further. He began organizing small community drives in the store, collecting warm clothing for local shelters, and running donation bins for families who were short on food. His co-workers joined in, fueling a ripple effect that spread beyond the aisles. James found himself reflecting on how a single act of kindness could ignite a spark that changed multiple lives. He recalled a quote his father had repeated often: "A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle." Watching Ethan and others give freely of themselves, James witnessed the truth of that statement. Months later, Parker's Quick Stop hosted a community open house at Ethan's store to celebrate the Bridge of Hope initiative's success. Tables lined the front sidewalk with free health screenings, sign-up sheets for local charities, and small giveaways. Curious neighbors wandered in, asking questions about the new employee fund, amazed that a business was so publicly committed to helping its people. James stood near the entrance, greeting visitors. Soon, an older gentleman shuffled up, hat in hand. James recognized him instantly. Mr. Reese, the man Ethan had once quietly paid for. After some hesitation, Mr. Reese extended his hand. "Mr. Parker, I wanted to say thank you, not just to Ethan, but to this whole place. I got back on my feet, found a better job, and I'm doing all right now. But I never forgot how your store, especially that young man, gave me a hand when I was down." James shook his hand warmly. "I'm so happy to hear that, sir. You deserve every bit of good fortune coming your way." Nearby, Ethan was helping a family navigate the booths. James overheard him say, "If you ever need advice, let me know. A lot of local groups can help stretch a budget or find daycare options." Ethan wasn't boasting. He was just genuine. That sincerity was the bedrock of everything James hoped to build. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, the open house wrapped up. Employees and families started packing away tables and chairs, smiling and chatting with one another. James gathered everyone for a brief, heartfelt thank you. He wanted them to understand that this was bigger than one event or one initiative. It was a new culture, fueled by compassion and respect. He cleared his throat. "Sometimes we chase numbers so hard that we forget the heart behind them," he said. "But every time I step into this store, I'm reminded that businesses don't thrive because of spreadsheets alone. They thrive because of people who care, who show up every day to make someone's world better. That's the real power of community. And as the old saying goes, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." Applause and cheers filled the air. The staff drew closer, forming an impromptu circle. Ethan stood near James, smiling from ear to ear, his eyes reflecting gratitude and pride. Diana, Walter, and others joined in, feeling a renewed sense of purpose in their work. Later, James retreated to his car, letting the warmth of the day's events wash over him. In the rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of himself, the once distant CEO who had rediscovered his roots. That undercover trip had changed him forever. He realized that if he wanted Parker's Quick Stop to flourish, he had to nurture the everyday heroes like Ethan, who quietly shaped customers' experiences and co-workers' morale. He resolved to visit stores more often, to maintain that personal connection he'd once lost. Just before driving away, he noticed Ethan stepping outside with a younger cashier, guiding her through some detail about the next day's schedule. Even from a distance, James could tell he was doing it with patience and a friendly demeanor. It was a snapshot of the future he envisioned for the entire company. One simple act of compassion, paying for a customer's loaf of bread, had become the catalyst that sparked change across multiple locations. As for the lessons learned, they were as clear to James as the night sky overhead. Kindness has a ripple effect, carrying us from one heart to another. True leadership isn't about power, but about service, recognizing the humanity in every individual who walks through the door. And if there was one message James hoped everyone would take away, it was this: never underestimate the impact of small acts of goodness. They might just turn a single store into a thriving community, and a struggling employee into a shining example of what a company's culture can be. That is the story of how one undercover boss walked into his own store and stopped cold after hearing what a young cashier said. If it resonates with you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that compassion still exists in unexpected places. Tell me your thoughts or your own stories of workplace kindness, because I'd love to hear them. Remember, we rise by lifting others, and a single spark of warmth can inspire a brighter world. Let's keep the spark alive.